that many people who reserved campsites in Algonquin Park for this Canada Day weekend have canceled their reservations. Canoeing with smoke in your eyes and in your lungs doesn't sound like much fun. And with campfires being outlawed now, cooking meals would be more difficult. What's camping without a campfire, after all? It's an eerie feeling, right? I don't think I'm alone in this. It's a very eerie feeling. Our city skyline looks more like Los Angeles. And there's no real end in sight. These fires are expected to continue burning and burning throughout much of the summer. Just when many of us put our masks away, many are taking them out again and wearing them for a different reason, for a different fear, a different risk. And so I bring back a midrash that I shared with the congregation in the early days of the pandemic. You may remember it. It's a classic. The question is, why Abraham? When God said to Avram, Lech lecha, get yourself going, what was so deserving about Abraham out of all the people? Why did he earn the privilege? How did he earn the privilege of setting the world's monotheistic religions into motion? The majority of the human beings on the planet today look to Abraham as their spiritual patriarch, Avraham Avinu, we say. And the answer, one of the many answers, comes in the form of this midrash. Rabbi Yitzchak tells a parable. There was a man who was traveling from place to place when he noticed there was a castle on fire. Bira achat doleket. There was a particular fortress aflame. And the man asked, to whom we don't know, but the man asked aloud, is it possible that this castle is without someone to look after it? And maybe he asked this question in the quiet, questioning voice within. Maybe he shouted it, hoping someone would hear. And lo and behold, someone did hear. The owner of the castle looked out from it and said, I am the owner of the castle. Ani hu Baal ha'olam. So it is with Abraham, Avraham Avinu. He looked around and he saw that his world was on fire. And so, maybe quietly or maybe with urgency and a full voice, he shouted out, is it possible that this world castle is without someone looking after it? And just then the owner of the world castle, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, looks out and answers him, saying, Ani hu Baal ha'olam. I, God says, I am the owner of this world castle. Now, there's another way to tell the story, to read this phrase, Bira hadoleket. It could be a castle raging on fire, out of control. But Rashi, who himself lived when the world was, his world literally was on fire, when Jewish communities and cities throughout Ashkenaz were being set to torch during the First Crusades. He survived those days by a fluke, but most of his teachers, most of his students did not. And so I find it surprising and astonishing and inspiring, actually, that he reads this phrase, Habira hadoleket, the castle doleket, in a completely different way. You can hear in the word doleket the same verb as lehadlik, ner shel Shabbat. So instead of a raging, consuming, dangerous, threatening fire, it could be that the castle that the wandering man saw was a castle aglow. It was a castle lit up beautifully in a way that was contained and perfect. And Rashi says, so must it have been for Abraham, who saw the illuminating light of sun by day and moon and stars by night. And he asks, who is the one responsible for this world, this universe that is so magically lit? So it's not a world of danger, it's not a world of destruction, it is a world of wonder and infinite beauty. That's Rashi's read on the Midrash. So let's take these two lenses and come back to this week, to this strange world that gives rise this week to a kind of vulnerability that many of us have not felt since the early days of the pandemic. We ask, what questions do we ask in the footsteps of Abraham? We ask, what will become of us? We ask, how long will this go on? We ask, what can we do in the immediate? And what can we do for our unborn grandchildren and their grandchildren? What can I do to protect myself and those I love in the here and now? And finally, we can ask, as our spiritual ancestor Abraham asked, who's in charge here? Sheha'olam hazeh belo manhig, is it possible that this world is without anyone looking over it? The questions being prompted by what we see outside our windows and what we feel in our eyes and in our throats, these are questions of spiritual curiosity. These are questions posed by people who are spiritually awake. And so I urge you, don't push them down. Don't resist them. Instead, lift them up and see what answers might come in turn. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel reflects on the two versions of the Midrash, the castle on fire and the castle aglow. He writes in his masterpiece of a book, God in Search of Man, there are those who sense the ultimate question in moments of horror and in moments of despair. And on the other hand, there are those who sense the ultimate questions in moments of wonder and moments of joy. It is both the grandeur and the misery of living that makes us sensitive to the ultimate question. The world is in flames, sometimes consumed by evil. Is it possible that there is no one to take care of it? The world is illuminated by an infinite number of stars, and each one of those stars has corresponding planets and moons. How is it possible that there is no creator who set them all into motion? So let me end with this. What I find most haunting about that midrash, that ancient rabbinic parable, is not Abraham's question. I understand Abraham's question. But what I find haunting is God's reply. God gives an answer that isn't really an answer. When God says, I am the master of this house, God is reassuring Abraham, I am here. Hineni, I am. But God does not explain the flames, and God does not explain the illuminations. Moreover, God does not attempt to put out the fire. Instead, God says, God commands, Lech lecha, get yourself going. Abraham, I am here. I will not explain the nature of this cosmos that I have built, but get yourself going. Find your place in it. For directly or indirectly, humanity is the one setting most of these metaphorical and actual fires. And now only we can put out the flames. Abraham asks, where are you? And God answers, Where are you? This is the dialogue, the question answered with another question that has set us into motion for 4,000 years as a people. God and humanity, we find one another when we ask these questions of one another, and perhaps only together we can extinguish these flames. So with that glimmer of hope, that bira hadoleket, that glimmering world that we enter into with new eyes and new insight on Shabbat, we can turn to conclude our tefillah today. Did I